Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of covers. Yesterday, we checked out the classic Raining Blood by Slayer. Today, we're going to be looking at a cover of Raining Blood by Tori Amos. That's not that's not what I'm expecting. But I guess we're going to see what's going on here. So we have Tori Amos's Raining Blood. Interesting take on it so far.
The sky is turning red. Return to power draws near.
That little run there is interesting. It's dissonant against everything else.
The sky's crimson tear. Abolish the rules. Abolish the rules. Made of stone.
I'm really curious if this is going anywhere or if this is the song.
Pierced from below, cells of my treacherous past.
Really working that dissonance in there. Interesting production choice on that too, that one syllable. I like moments like that.
Raining blood, raining blood from a lacerated sky, bleeding its horror, creating my structure. Now I shall reign in
Interesting. Is that it? All right. Yeah, very interesting take on this. I really don't even know where to begin. There's well, to say that this has very little to do with the original might be a bit of an understatement. There is so little here that calls back to the original that it's almost like a different piece unto itself. And I think this brings up the best time to introduce this concept that I haven't really had a chance to talk about before. There really isn't much of a standardization in the way that we talk about covers. Is this a cover? How is this any different than somebody playing the exact song, note for note, word for word, on the same instruments? Um, where's the line drawn at what a cover is? And so I went and looked it up to see if there was any sort of notion of standardization to this, and I mean, kind of. A cover is defined as a new performance or recording by somebody other than the original performer or composer. So a cover is a very large umbrella term that covers covers a lot of stuff. Basically, as long as you're not the person who made it, you're playing a cover of it. And for that reason, I believe it is a bit too loose of a definition for it to be for it to have any weight in conversation. So I would like to propose two new words. And I don't think I'm really coining either of these. I'm just utilizing them in a different context. The first is an arrangement or possibly a rearrangement. This comes from the classical term uh, where somebody would take a song already written and rewrite the pieces for a different set of instruments. The song itself would be as close to the original as possible. It's just maybe it was written for, four strings, and now you're writing it for a trumpet, a tuba, a trombone, and a baritone or something. You're writing it for a brass section rather than a string section. Um, so that's an arrangement, and if you ever look at sheet music, you'll have at the top possibly the composer's name and then ARR dot and someone else's name. That was the arranger. They took the original work and transcribed it and gave the parts to whatever instruments would be in this new group of musicians. So when we get to songs that are one-to-one covers, they're perfect in every way possible except the vocalist is going to be different, so they bring a different timbre to the vocal part. Maybe they're using their signature guitar tones rather than the guitar tones that the original band made popular. These would be arrangements. We're taking the exact same song and just divvying the parts out to new people, but the song is staying as close as possible. And if we're going to call that a rearrangement, I think something like Tori Amos's cover of Raining Blood should be called a reimagining, taking the same thematic ideas and usually, in this case, the same uh, lyrics and putting them in an entirely different song, an entirely different context. I think a reimagining would even cover something like taking the original melodic ideas or uh, chordal ideas and slowing them down. Because that was actually something I was listening for here. If she had that iconic riff in here, just at this much slower pace, and if that had happened, I think that still falls under reimagining. You're not necessarily taking the song one for one. You are making changes to it and adapting it further than just assigning it to new instrumentation or new timbres or new voices. So with that stated, I'm going to be speaking about this for the next couple of weeks in those terms of rearrangement and reimagining. So let's dive into this now that we've got some of the vocabulary out of the way, because like I said, cover is just, it's too large of an umbrella. It means too much. So yeah, this is a reimagining of Raining Blood, and I think it does an interesting task that she basically heard the song in a very different way than Slayer intended it. And I think I like where she was going with it. I really do. I wish the song had evolved into something. I don't know what Tori Amos's style is. I don't know if she has any bombast to her work at all, or if she is strictly that sort of vulnerable singer and piano kind of style, maybe possibly having an orchestra behind her, kind of like we checked out with uh, was that Ruth Moody? Or no, that was Regina Spektor. Piano and a small string section. Still really keeping that smaller, tighter uh, song style. So, like I said, I don't know if that's her style or if she has some more bombastic sections. She can write larger elements in still within her style. But I do wish the song evolved into something else. And uh but I do appreciate what she was going for. So as I mentioned yesterday, the lyrics to Raining Blood is about being it's about this dude who was in heaven and got kicked out, and now they're in purgatory, and they are plotting revenge so that they can go back to heaven, slay the angels, and the angelic blood rains down. That is the story. And just speaking about the lyrics alone, I want to say that it's quite impressive that she took what was essentially maybe a minute and a half of vocals in the original and stretched it out to 6.5 minutes. There was that extended intro that was probably about 30 or 40 seconds, so we're probably looking at 5.5 minutes, but still, that that means that the lyrical aspect took up 4 to 5 times longer than Slayer gave it. Um, so yeah, just a little bit of being impressed by that, finding a way to keep that interesting. Um, but yeah, so I like this contemplative element. Whereas with Slayer's idea of the song, it almost seems like this dude in purgatory has been there a while. His rage is seething, it's palpable, it is infecting everything about this person. You can feel that in the music. It is always fast, it is always harsh, it is always abrasive. There is nothing about it that is moody. Nothing about it that is brooding. It is in that pure hatred area. And that makes me think that we've maybe seen this person, a bit into his time in purgatory. This is a person who's had time to dwell on these thoughts, and they have taken over uh, to the point where they are mentally unstable and fixated on this revenge. Whereas with Tori's version, it feels like, especially at the beginning, he has just been cast out. He is spending his first moments in purgatory, and there's this uh this melancholy aspect to it, right? The song definitely gets more tense as we go on. I'm going to assume that Tori plays the piano here. I don't know, but I'm just going to assume that she's doing both. It'll make it'll make my words and thoughts easier to parse. So her piano playing starts out rather melodic. It definitely has some edge to it. She's not playing in a major key. She's definitely in a different mode. I mentioned early on that there's a little run either in the middle or at the end of her four bar phrase. It is a sort of transitory concept that goes from one one chord to the next. But I can't remember if that was from bar 2 to 3 or from 4 to 1. Or maybe there's a larger idea here. I only saw the 4 bar passage, but it could be that there's actually a larger phrasing to the chordal structure. Um, yeah, there's these three notes that I think they're half steps, all of them, and it gives this chromatic dissonance to the piece, even though the rest of the notes around it are creating somewhat more of a more consonant structure to it. So she does play around with some dissonance early on, but by the 4 or 5 minute mark, the dissonance is heavily injected into the music. So we do have this element of shifting mental states, I feel. Um, there's definitely a change in the musical tone and feel and atmosphere from the beginning to the end. Now, that isn't quite showcased in the lyrics, in the vocal delivery, but the music does support this idea. Um, but yeah, it starts off a bit more consonant, a bit more melodic, and it provides a huge contrast from Slayer's anger and wrath and speed. We start out almost melancholy, pensive. There's a thoughtfulness to it, but there's definitely an element of something lost. And I'm not sure if Tori means to have this lost concept uh, in the music as a way to show that this person lost his place in heaven, or if they're losing part of their mind as this madness begins to overtake them. But there's definitely this concept of something lost in the music, this pensiveness of things were better in the past. There's this thought process in the music, and I do find it interesting how often the vocals will clip. And it's a very strange thing because the vocals, for the most part, are very well produced. But there's notes, or I should say syllables, randomly selected seemingly. It didn't seem to be that they were words or syllables that should have carried much weight, but they did because sonically they stood out against the rest, where they would get a massive echo on them, or they would be exceptionally wide for some reason. There were some very interesting syllables that were wider than the rest. Um, what I mean wider than the rest is that they feel like they're panned further. It feels like these syllables, these notes, were further away from me than the rest, and it's a really weird, it's really weird to go about producing it. It's a weird way to produce anything, honestly. Panning from one side to the other can provide an interesting Doppler effect, but having a static panning that just gets a little more distant and back a little and back to that same position again, it's an interesting choice. That's all I'm gonna say about it. I'm not gonna say it's wrong or bad. I've never heard it before. It's interesting. Um, and then I mentioned one note at the beginning. I didn't mention it at the end, but it did happen again. It wasn't even a plosive. It wasn't like a p or a b or any of the normal plosive sounds that tend to uh, uh, clip. It was just a regular old consonant. Maybe it might have been, it might have been a C sound. I don't remember. But it definitely caught me off guard because it did clip. There was some texture, some of the natural timbre that was shaved off the top. And it sounds like it was widened as sort of a way to overcome that. Like it wasn't intentional, but they left it in and found a way to produce it to make it sound like it might fit a little. I don't know. It's another weird instance of, or I should say, another instance of weird production technique. Uh, I don't know. I really don't have any explanation for it. It stands out to me. A lot of the vocal decisions stand out to me as far as the production goes. Um, but yeah, so we have this person just come down from purgatory. Let's get back into the analysis here. Just come down from purgatory, and they're walking through their thoughts, right? The lyrics even start out this way, and I think it's a fantastic decision to go about this concept. Go about the song conceptually is from this element of just being cast out. Uh, oh, okay. So the opening line is actually trapped in purgatory, which in Slayer's song does give me this concept of being trapped there for a long time. But here, it almost feels like an acknowledgement of the current situation. The way that she says it, trapped in purgatory, a lifeless object, alive, awaiting reprisal. And like I said, it's this whole turn of uh, chordal ideas, the mode that she's working within, the way that she delivers it, the tempo change, the way that she hangs onto every syllable, the way Slayer delivered it. I mentioned that they got through all these lyrics in like a minute and a half, combined of lyrical sections. It's just fast, rapid fire. Like I said, it's this determination, right? You really get this idea that this dude wants to enact this plan so much he can't even talk about his thoughts, his plan itself, without just rushing through it. He's ready to do this. Whereas the way Tori Amos approaches it is it's more of a sinking feeling, the realization of what is happening. There is no rush to enact any plan. It's more of this process of figuring out what the plan is, while also just, being struck with this weight of your new current situation. This concept of being trapped in purgatory. Man, it's such an interesting way to go about it. So like I said, the vocal delivery doesn't really change throughout the song, but we do see a change in the music. And it introduces a lot more dissonance, especially when you start looking at chordal stuff. Because if I remember correctly, a lot of the spotlighted elements of the piano in the first half of the song are a moving line. It's not necessarily a melody, it is heavily based on chordal movements, but it's not all the notes of the chord played at once. It's more of moving through the notes one at a time, sort of like presenting the chordal structure through a melody line. But once we start getting to the halfway point, we start hearing more and more notes being played together. And a lot of these notes are introducing dissonance to it. And I really like how this might be the corruption of the mind as the melancholy and pensive elements begin to leave and they're being replaced with the anger, the rage, the this concept of going to war with those who you believe have wronged you. Yeah, I really like it. To me, it feels like the other side of a coin. As far as Slayer's take, like I said, is pure anger. This one is more of the transformation into what would become the mindset in the Slayer version. Not my favorite version of the song, though. Simply because it's stationary, it's static. I think it works thematically, it works as a piece of art. I really enjoy listening to this critically, but on a casual listen, I think I would much rather prefer Slayers just because it has more energy, more momentum, more changes. I think I mentioned there were like four changes in the 4 minutes that it is, and the first minute of that is a the rain atmospheric intro. So there's really only like 3.5 minutes of actual song, and they found a way to put like four or five, six sections in there, introduce a lot of oh man, I didn't make that connection till just now. So a lot of Slayer's version is rather consonant, right? It all sounds good together. It does have that metal edge to it. It is a bit darker, but it really doesn't play around with dissonance too much up until that final half a minute or whatever, when they start diving into chaos and the two guitars are just playing as fast as they can, whatever rhythms they want. It seems like they're not really doing anything in harmony with each other. It really does introduce this element of chaos at the end. And I like how that concept was carried over to Tori's, where she starts out more consonant and ends up more dissonant. So that's a nice little tie over, and I think that might be the only tie over. Like I said, I was looking for at least the iconic riff in here, even at a slowed down pace. I was not expecting her to bring back that energy, but I don't believe I heard it. I heard something close to it at the end. It almost felt like she wanted to allude to it without actually playing it, but I'm not quite sure if I heard that because I wanted it to be the original riff or if because it's actually what she put in there. And it's possible I missed it somewhere throughout the middle of the track as well. But I do wish there was some tie to the original. I think that's, to me, that's one of the best ways to go about making a cover, especially if you want to do a reimagining. You want to put your own take on it, is to at least take one of the more iconic moments of it and do an homage somehow. You don't need to inject the moment word for word or note for note into your song, but at least present the idea, so that almost like an Easter egg, so that somebody who's a fan of the original is like, oh yeah, I heard that. Nice. Though also, like I said, just from an artistic standpoint, I can't deny this concept of just completely reimagining everything and having your entire own take on it, especially when you do what I think Tori did and look at it from a different perspective, from a different emotion, and approach it from that angle rather than what the original was intending to do. All right, those are my thoughts. Tori Amos's Raining Blood. This is where you guys come in. Let me know what you thought of this one. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you think I was way off base, do you enjoy this one more than Slayer's? I don't know. Let me know. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel. You can join the Patreon and help select future themes and songs. You can get a special selection on the channel, join the Discord community, follow me on Twitter, email me, tons of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. That is not it for today. In less than a minute, we're going to have our special selection for the day. If that doesn't interest you, then I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We'll be looking at another cover. Well, technically the original. To continue on with this week's theme of covers, Thursday we'll be looking at the cover of what we listen to tomorrow. All right, that wraps it up for today. Remember to be critical but never cynical about the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.